Welcome. You are listening to the Be a Better Being podcast, hosted by Michelle Zellner and Sasha Berscheid. Michelle and Sasha are here to give you information and inspiration to help you live your healthiest, happiest lives. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoy the show.
Greetings. Thank you for tuning in to the Be a Better Being podcast. I am Michelle Zellner, your host. And today I'm joined by a really exciting guest because she and I met through a mutual friend, someone who actually took my YOU Revolution class through DPS years and years ago. And he suggested that she reach out to me, and she did. And voila, here we are. And this conversation is one I've been wanting to have for quite some time. It's about confidence, and maybe even specifically about how to build confidence in kids. So Jen B, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you for having me. I'm glad we connected as well. And it's a small world. You never know where you're going to end up.
Exactly. I know when you had said, oh, I have a friend, Joey Pena, and he told me to reach out to you, I was like, oh, immediately saw all the visions of Joey from years ago in class. He's definitely someone that you remember. So
absolutely.
Yes. Well, you and I had a really great conversation and came to discover that we're very much aligned in so many things, in our approach to things, maybe our beliefs and philosophy on some things. And I love what you have done in your career, life, whatever. So I want to get into that story and then really talk about what you are doing now and how you are growing in a new direction.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. Thank you. So I can share a little bit about me. I am currently the founder of a company called Grow. I mostly coach women, and it stands for Get Ready to Own Your Worth. Similar to you, Michelle, and I love the fact that we've aligned on this topic. It's the fact that as women, we have a huge impact in our societies. And a lot of those societies start right in our home, and then the way we help our kids to develop their confidence, and then the way that we show up ourselves. Essentially, at the end of the day, I got this message actually from somebody I was networking about a week ago. It's about being the role model. And sometimes it's not really knowing all the answers to the questions, but by providing a safe zone or a safe area for our kids to be able to ask a question and build confidence. So I'm very passionate about this. As you know, I have my own story of how I arrived here under the fact that I do believe our mess is our message. And now it's our time to pass that message on.
I love that. Our mess is our message. So let's do it. Let's dive into your mess.
Oh boy. Let's just take off the Band-Aid, huh?
Yep.
Yeah, I think I shared a little bit of the story, but here's what I'll share is both of my parents are Cuban immigrants, and my dad had the ability to come over to the United States in 1980. He got amnesty from the US after being a political prisoner in Cuba, and we won't really get into that. But the reason I share about him is because he is a lot of the reason why I show up in the world the way I have, through positivity and through trying to lead others. Here's what I'll say though. Everything sounds amazing when you're on the other side of it. But or should I say, and when I was 8, I feel like really that was a moment in my life where there was a lot of mess. And I think looking back on it now, I can be aware of it, and I can be grateful to a certain extent for that mess, but it wasn't easy. So the few things that I'll share is that my dad started getting sick when I was 8. And in my household, as it's pretty typical of most, we love to show love through food. And for my mom, that was a big, big thing. I'm an only child, so it was basically her and I bonding over this connection about food. But here's where it starts getting a little bit tough. Second helpings, there were tons of them. But usually the second question I usually got was, when are you going to lose the weight? And by the age of 8, I already knew that there was something, quote unquote, wrong with me and the way that I was showing up in the world. And all those little jabs, for lack of a better word, start to peel off a little bit of that confidence that I think as kids we have. I mean, you tell my 7-year-old son now he can't do anything or something, he's going to tell me otherwise, right? He learned how to ride a bike when he's 4, like all these things that by my age of 8 started being peeled away. I also didn't learn how to speak English till I was 8. Spanish was the language in our household. And going to school was an experience of not really feeling like I fit in, for lack of a better word. So I'm getting some of that at home. I'm getting some of that at school. And then there were kids in my neighborhood as well. But I very quickly learned, unfortunately, through those people that I looked up to, that sometimes the kiddos could be a little bit of a bully. And so between all those different factors, I think I mostly ended up feeling alone. And that's the word that I'll share. Didn't have any siblings either. And with my dad going through his complications, I started getting a little bit of that, like I am the head of the household at the age of 8, which sounds amazing, but it's really not when you're 8. So that's a little bit of my mess that I will share. Life between the ages of 8 and 14 got really complicated, I'll say. And the reason why I stood firm on still showing up for school and doing all these things was because of my dad. I believed if he could go through what he was going through, I had the perseverance inside of me to be able to continue the journey. So school was something that came easy to me, for lack of a better word, but it was hard socially and emotionally. By the age of 14, I did lose a lot of weight. And anybody knows Ricky Lake? I'm just going to put that plug here too. Because she saved my life. She doesn't know it yet. She'll get to hear it one day. But I was watching her talk show and I realized that there was a panel of people who were still working with and dealing with obesity. And something dawned on me. I either start making some changes, or that's going to be me. So that's really where the story starts to happen with the physical change. It's really, I'd love to say that emotionally and mentally, like things just clicked right then and there. They didn't. It was probably not for another 20 years. That I started to realize that we're not just one part of our health, but it's really a pyramid of multiple different things. And for some of us, it takes a little while later in life. So that's what I'm really passionate about these days. It's showing folks that it's a multi-pronged approach and that nobody's really alone in their journey.
Well, I love that story. And actually, I don't think you had told me any of that. So thank you for sharing with me and for the listeners, because I do think, our history shapes so much, right? I grew up with fantastic parents, both of them very healthy still to this day. And yet I too felt alone because my mom was Dutch, foreign. We lived way out in the country, so not close to any neighbors. I did private gymnastics, so I was not really tight with my school friends, not super tight with my gym friends because I'm part-time in both places. And my effort to be everywhere really left me being nowhere, right? So that sense of not belonging, it is one that we all feel no matter what. It just comes in a different form. But I think, whether you're 8 or 12 or 28 or 48, we all go through those periods of feeling like we don't belong. And then we might do or not do certain things to fit in and to then find belonging. Maybe it's not the best, maybe it's not a good fit, but it's something that gives us that sense of being and sense of I matter to these people or to this group or to this cohort. And I mean, that's just an innate trait in a human, right? We have to have a sense of belonging. That's actually drilled into our survival. And if for whatever reason, the environments that we are put into don't fill us in that way, then we're going to try to seek it out in other ways. So absolutely. As you journeyed into adulthood and now you get into, your working life and getting into the early 20s, 30s, probably still working on some of your physical health aspects, let's talk about the evolution of the mental and emotional shift that happened as well.
Absolutely. And again, one of the things that I would tell anybody, it does not matter what age you're at, is first off, you're not alone. I also believe that somebody has to first tell their story. And so this is why I'm so passionate about the work that I do today. It's about sharing some of that story. So it's a continued journey. I'm not sure any of us ever really truly arrive because it's a continuous learning process. So yes, definitely within my 20s, I went to college. For me, that was a huge sense of belonging. I feel like I had met some of my people. And that helped to build a little bit of confidence. I had a place in the world. I had a purpose. And I think at the end of the day, that's what most of us want. Now, here's the deal. Most of us, if we attend college and we finish college, we also leave college. So there ends up being this period as well where you're now like an adult in the world and you have these responsibilities and it's not just about college life. I think honestly, for me, a lot of that started to change when after a breakup, and sometimes there are things in life that change our environment. And so we're able to learn a little bit more about ourselves. I started to realize what Jen wanted to do in life and what Jen wanted to become, not because her parents said so, not because my partner wanted it, but because I wanted it. So ultimately what ends up happening is I did join multiple different gyms. I am a very social person, so I don't know where in the process I thought that working out alone would help. it didn't. So eventually I'd come on the wagon and I'd fall off the wagon. And I think most of us can relate to that to some degree. For me, it was a community of athletes, I'll call us that, who I leaned into and who were able to see me for where I was. It was not for a level of perfection or a level of running time or for a level of how much you can lift or any of those things. It was for a community of encouragement. And the more I started to simply say, because for me at that time, working out still had a lot of weight associated with it, a lot of emotional weight associated with it, was simply point the car in the right direction. Put your shoes on. Go and pack your workout clothes the night before. The more I started to build those habits and the more I started to work out in this community, the more my identity about who I was as an athlete started to change. And when you start building these habits and then those, you end up arriving at these situations where you can do your thing, I think your confidence starts to change. And you stack up those wins. Michelle, for me, the moment, and I didn't know this was what essentially was happening then was when I decided that I was going to take this thing, which essentially is confidence, motivation, belonging, all these things. And I was going to apply this concept I was learning at the gym, at home, and at work, and with my friends. Based on me first, based on me taking care of me first and knowing what I wanted and what I needed. And then everything started to change. It was interesting. It's like everything that I needed, all the comfort that I needed, all the belonging that I needed started to fit around me instead of me trying to go seek it in a place that often it wasn't there. So that's when the emotional and mental track started to change. And most significantly, what changed was the way I was talking to myself.
I have said many, many, many times, in fact, it's a chapter in my book, movement is medicine. And you
Absolutely.
don't really ever maybe know exactly how it is going to help you in some of the most surprising ways, right? You went to the gym maybe as, some way to help with your weight issues. And yet look at what you got out of it instead and in addition to, right?
Absolutely.
So I love that you found that community that offered what you needed to actually grow and evolve and blossom into who you've always been. It's just been like tucked down in there, not able to really get out. And that you found it in a way that also enhances your physical well-being, right?
Absolutely.
Because we can find those communities in lots of different ways. Very few of them actually also enhance your physical well-being. And I firmly believe that we are one whole unit. I can't work on my mental health while I'm completely ignoring my physical health. I can't devote my physical health needs and just not address what's going on up in here. It never works if we're only compartmentalizing. It only works if we're integrating. And anytime you can get the benefits physically, mentally, and emotionally from doing one thing, I mean, talk about stacking up wins, right?
Right. Those are the things you want to continue doing.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we are busy and we have so many options for so many things nowadays. Everything we want is instant. So if we can find the one thing to support us, 4 or 5 different pillars of wellness, we get a win out of that. We get some excitement out of that. And that's the thing that we are going to set ourselves up to do over and over and over again. I believe that one of the ingredients to confidence is consistency, but you have to find the thing that makes sense for you. It's not for your best friend, Sally, or for what you did 10 years ago, or we're going to do 10 years in the future. Maybe I'll be playing pickleball then. I don't play pickleball today. It's okay because I found my people. And your people may change, but it's about building that consistency into your everyday. And it really changes your identity at the end of the day, which is a major one.
Yeah, I mean, consistency just reinforces your own belief that you can do it, that you can keep doing it. And, I'm sure when you coach people, they're like, well, I fell off the wagon. I'm always very curious as to what this wagon looks like because there is no wagon. You're either doing it or you're not doing it. If you're not doing it, there's a reason you're not doing it. Let's figure that out. And yet when you label it as I've fallen off the wagon, I've never encountered anybody who's like, I fell off the wagon. Woohoo. Yay. I didn't go. I didn't work out. Right. It's always I'm a loser. I'm a failure. I can't do it right. I'll never get it done. Well, what does that do for your confidence in anything else? Right. It all spills into other things as well.
Absolutely. And language, just like you said, has such an impact. I think many of us get used to certain words that we incorporate subconsciously. And at some point, I believe every one of those words has an energy within us. So big difference between I have to go to the gym. It's a requirement, right? If I don't, like you said, I'm not enough. I didn't show up. I'm a failure, so on and so forth, versus I get to go to the gym. I am healthy enough and strong enough to walk myself to a gym and do the thing. And I don't care if the thing's for 20 minutes, 60 minutes, or you want to train for the next marathon. Something to start somewhere. So language has a huge power. Many times I feel like you kind of need a little bit of an accountability buddy on it to be like, hey, that's not really serving you. I know you've been saying that for many years, right? I'm too old to do this. Who the heck is too old to do anything? There's plenty of proof that we are not. But if you choose to believe it, that is the way it's going to show up.
Yeah, undeniably. And I know for me in my own growth, it was the pivotal shift was when I started using different language as well. And it was only because I became aware that the language I was using was really not helpful. And the only person it was harming was me. And the only person who can change it is me. And yet, because we're so ingrained and entrenched in that kind of dialogue, we don't even know we're using it. So if you don't have the awareness yourself, that accountability buddy is certainly very valuable. And I do call people out when I'm coaching somebody and they start using the can't, have to, should. I'm like, time out, let's start over.
Absolutely.
My other favorite, and maybe you get this too, is the comma but.
Uh-huh.
I did XYZ, comma, but, and then they'll go into all the reasons that's not good enough or all the things they didn't do. And I am trying to get rid of the comma but out of everybody's vocabulary.
Absolutely. You know, I think the most striking example of that, and my clients get it as well, because we talk about that it's and, right? All the time is, if you've ever heard or anybody has ever said, I love you, but, okay, you do not care about the first half of that sentence. Anything that comes after that but is going to have so much more power than whatever that person intended to say on that first half of that sentence. That's an extreme example. And I think most of us can relate to it. And just like you said, Michelle, we use this every single day. And so it's interesting, even when you're writing something, that might be your first attempt at trying to catch these commas, buts, because it's right there. It's physically in front of you, right? So the power of it's life-changing at the end of the day, right? But I can't tell you how many, and you know, there comes an age where I think my son's approaching it as well. He's 11 and he's a very social kid and he wants to fit in the best that he can. Okay. So we start to change a little bit of who we are and our people-pleasing tendencies and, you know, basically tooting our own horn, which I'm a big fan. Toot your own horn, y'all. That's why we have our horn to toot. Okay. But all that to say, we engage in so many minimizing behaviors, right? The not enoughness behaviors, the, well, thanks, but you know, you receive a compliment and you want to dish one right back. Just sit in it for just a minute. It's okay for someone to praise you and to be able to, for lack of a better word, glorify you for a second. Okay. And yes, you can do that to them too, but just give it a moment. So the but behavior I find very much as a minimizing behavior, people pleasing, you know, hey, whatever, like, great, but.
Yeah. And that starts at a very young age, right? And maybe it's culturally, maybe it's, you know, some gender roles. I know a lot of girls, females are told to tamp it down. It's not polite. That's bragging. That's conceited. You're going to be labeled a bitch, right? And yet in boys, it's celebrated. It's go do it, go boast, go be proud, go show it off, go, you know, let everybody know how great you are. And again, all of that really is rooted in our DNA. Those are totally normal things to do, but they get reinforced and sometimes to such a degree that eventually it is going to maybe cause a problem for a man now who's super boastful and perhaps needs to come down to earth a bit. Or for a female who, you know, stays a little quiet, doesn't want to speak out, holds back because that's what she's been taught to do. And that might be literally holding her back from things as well. So I think, again, modeling first. I mean, adults, if we haven't figured it out for ourselves yet, we probably should do that work.
Mm-hmm.
And also, how are we speaking to our kids, right? What message are we giving them? How are we helping to mold and shape them so they can identify the balance and balance those two roles? Because I think there is time for us to maybe hold back a little bit, and that's probably the better route to go. And there is time for us to celebrate and be proud and acknowledge, and that is the appropriate route to go. It's figuring out when is the right one, right? And sometimes,
Absolutely.
We got to go through that learning process.
Absolutely. Yeah. The other thing I'll add to that is, as much as we don't think it sometimes, our kids are always watching. And the things that we say about ourselves and the way that we might look in the mirror and say certain things, they look up to us. For a good part of their life, we are their support. We are their safety. And they start to mimic some of those behaviors. One of the things that my mom told me fairly early on, and I'm, as an adult now, I know that this wasn't my story, but it was a story put on me, was regarding the way that I dressed. She had certain expectations. I had certain ways that I like to do things. And sometimes when those things aren't exactly discussed in an open setting, it becomes more of shame than really belonging, right? Which we know it's a basic need. It's very important. So just know that even when we think our kids are not watching or looking up to us, even when we think our kids are teenagers and they'd rather be hanging out with their own friends, they still know.
And I think also one of the things that, I don't know if it erodes confidence and probably both, prevents it from being built in the first place, is this fear of making a mistake, this fear of being wrong. I was just with a group of very high achieving teenagers at one of our local Colorado early colleges. And, we're talking, and I'm getting them to talk about nutrition. I'm asking them questions, and they are silent. And I know these are not silent kids because I'd been there hearing them just talk nonstop before we got started. And, the teacher was like, hey, y'all, just like when it's me, there is no wrong answer. And then later he said to me, they were really quiet because they were afraid to say the wrong thing to me, right? Because they don't know me. I'm not safe yet. I'm this girl who's coming in to tell them things. And so when I recognize that nobody's speaking, I kind of nudged them along, right? And I literally said, there are no right or wrong answers. I'm just genuinely curious what you think about this. And that opened them up to giving some ideas. And yes, some of them were correct and some of them were not, because there actually were right and wrong answers, but it didn't need to be phrased that way. And if it wasn't correct, how I engage with that is critical, right? And these are things that I've learned over the course of time. It's not, no, that's wrong. It's, wow, that is really interesting. I can see how you would come to that.
Right.
Not what I'm looking for right now. Such a different thing. It's the same answer. It's just presented in a very different way, right? Because what you don't want to do is make them put up a wall so that, okay, I was wrong. Well, I knew I'd be wrong. Why did I even bother speaking up? I'm not going to speak up next time. Versus, oh, interesting. I like where your brain is going with that. Let's explore that later. Like, oh, okay, this could be something different. So I think as we are, and again, this applies to adults as well, because we still hold back for fear of being wrong and judgment and all those things. So when we're interacting with anybody and maybe you get the answer you weren't looking for, let's learn how to respond to that in a way that continues the conversation, or at least offers the possibility of that, versus one that automatically shuts it down.
Absolutely. I love that you said that. It brings a thought to mind for me. Curiosity can resolve so much conflict, and it can make somebody feel so seen and heard. Many times we can end up being in a world where things are black or white. Things are either right or wrong. The reality is that the connection is really in the gray. It's in the curiosity. And what I love about what you said, Michelle, is, first off, great tip. Secondly, I'll say that it's interesting the things they'll bring up because that may steer a conversation towards something else that's really important to them as well, right? Something that might not. So I was an HR leader for 14 years. I have facilitated plenty of trainings in my life. And it's interesting how many times I've gone in with plan X, Y, and Z, and then it ends up being planned completely different. And I look at it and I'm like, I don't see it as a failure. I see it as I gave you exactly what it is that you needed at that time. Who am I to say that first we can't accomplish both either, right? So curiosity is so key and often something that many times we can rush through. So, and it's going to start that conversation. I can't tell you how many silent rooms I've also walked in as an HR leader. What is she here to tell me that I did wrong? I'm like, nothing. I just want to talk. But there's a little bit of stigma with being in leadership roles and being the figure of whatever. I'm glad that, you brought that up. Great point.
Well, and I think, anybody who is hesitant to express in any way, whatever it is, a thought, a belief, outward expression of how they want to dress, we, by nature, we learn to question ourselves. Mm-hmm. To your point earlier, you just let a kid be a kid. They don't know anything. They're just doing what they want to do, right? It is not until we have judged, we have corrected, we have shamed them or whatever, that they start to question and doubt and judge. And I think about, through my young years, it was never my parents. I was incredibly blessed. They never compared me and my sister to each other. We're very unique individuals. They supported us very individually. But it was other things like in gymnastics, right? Where it is competition. That's what gymnastics is. And you are literally being judged. That's what it is, right? Well, for somebody who maybe already struggles with some insecurities, that can be tough. And then I was Nicole's sister. I wasn't Michelle. To a lot of my teachers, I was Nicole's sister. And Nicole is smart. Nicole is a high achiever. Nicole knows physics and math and science, and she's the cheerleader, and she's in choir, and she's on, you name it. And I'm Nicole's sister. So what does that do? Oh, well, then I better be like Nicole, because if I'm not, right, then I won't be liked. I won't be seen, all these things. And so it's all these little, and then you have some friends, right? And man, kids are mean. Kids are mean to each other. They just are. And again, that's all normal human behavior because we are programmed for defending ourselves, for being the alpha, because that's who survives, right? So that's all normal. Right. Do we need to do that in today's world? Probably not. Probably not helpful. And so when you maybe are on one end or the other of that, all of that starts to creep in, either chip away at the confidence that you had, or really does prevent it from being built. And Jen, you probably know this, right? When you lack confidence, you start to do other things that make you feel better. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times,
to find a way to cope.
Things are not helping, right? They're not going to help your confidence in any way. But in the moment, they sure are better than the way you're feeling now.
Absolutely. Since we're talking about perfectionism, Michelle, let me bring this thing up, which I'm trying to be much more real. It's called social media. Okay. So here's the deal, right? Like, we applaud for the win. We applaud for the goal. We applaud for all these things. We applaud for good grades. We pay. I mean, I never received any money, but I've paid my kids for good grades. So very quickly, we start to learn there is a way of doing things and a way that there is not enough. What I know now is it takes practice and reps and the stuff behind the scenes, the stuff that sometimes is quote unquote failure, to get us there. It's a hard place to be because that's not where the applause is. That's not where the rewards is. That's not where the medals are. That's not where the pat on the backs are typically. I think we've gotten a little bit better, but when you watch, and I'm a huge fan of football, so it's the same thing in football as well. When you watch a football reel, when you watch the game condensed down to 2 minutes, what do you see? Nothing but tackles and touchdowns and all these different things. That was not the majority of the game. That might be 0.1 or 1% of the game. Same thing goes for social media. So we went to Elitch's, which is a Denver theme park, essentially. It's I believe it used to be a Six Flags, not anymore. On Sunday, there was a very happy picture of me and my family. We made it. We're here. We're at the water park. Look at the theme park. We're having so much fun. Here's some cotton candy, all the amazing things. And then I thought for a second, this doesn't, like, sure, this might spark some joy in someone, but I'm going to dish really what happened. It took us 2.5 hours to leave the house. There were bickerings, chores that didn't get done. I went into mama brain, which means I remembered all the things for them and I forgot all the things for me. So then there were 3 trips back to the house for all the things I had forgotten, including my wallet. We get to Elitch's, and 45 minutes in, it is pouring rain with thunder and lightning. That's not going to work at a water park. You're going to be told that you got to sit out for a while, okay? Or maybe even leave. That was my experience. Most of us, we forget those parts to also highlight as well. And so no wonder we're kind of feeling alone, because you just don't show at the theme park and all of a sudden, you know, everybody's greeting you and there's major applause and there's all the things. So if there's any advice that I'd give you, first off, y'all, is please realize that social media is a highlight reel. It's not reality. And secondly, if you're looking to take a step further, it'd be helpful, I think, for us as a community of women and moms and just people to realize that we have to tell a full story.
Yeah, I love that story because just had this conversation with a dear friend of mine who's been traveling into amazing places in the world. And I was like, girl, catch me up. Oh my gosh, it looks amazing. She's like, girl, it was miserable. It was awful. It was so hot. I was sticky and sweaty and uncomfortable every minute. It was probably one of the worst months of my life. Right? And I know I've been telling this message for as long as social media has existed. I think many of us know it's the highlight reel, and yet we are still drawn to believing, oh, look at her. Why is my life not like that? Now imagine, Jen, if you had grown up with that, like kids are today. I didn't have that, right? I'm 51 almost, right? Thank God I did not have social media for a lot of reasons, but definitely for that one. And so, man, somehow we got to get the kids to minimize it, really understand and educate them about what they are seeing and what they're not seeing. Like, that is the adult's job, is to help manage and navigate all of that and to have those open conversations about it. And it's hard to do because, you know, you don't want them to feel left out because all their friends are on it. And, oh, my kid is fine, right? That I hear that a lot. Oh, but my child's different. You know, she knows she's fine.
Yeah.
She's still a 13-year-old girl.
And what does it hurt to have the conversation? Listen, I know that some conversations are uncomfortable with children. I have 2 of my own, and they are young, and one of them is approaching the age where there's going to be a lot of uncomfortable conversations. The uncomfortable conversation is going to happen, either for me or for someone else, or social media, okay? So I'd rather be in front of it, or at least with a different viewpoint. It doesn't mean I isolate them from the world, but at least I've given them my take. So, and again, going back to the fact that, you know, I know at some point we think our parents aren't really that smart anymore, but now when I started getting into my late 20s and my early 30s, I got humbled up by life and just situations. And I remembered at that point how smart my mom was. And it was because she kept talking to me. We had that connection. So again, back to your point of kids listen to everything, make sure they listen to you.
So I want to shift a little bit before we have to wrap up here into specifically talking about grow, get ready to own your worth. Because I think this really is at the core of it. I teach a class called Love Thyself because we talk about self-care a lot. I have come to really appreciate that many people do not take care of themselves because they don't truly love themselves.
Absolutely. We believe we're not worthy of it. And so, yes.
Right. And so adults, kids, everybody, right? What does it mean to own your worth, and how do you help somebody get ready to own it? What does that actually look like?
Love that question. Again, going back to the fact that my mess is my message. And the reason I like to share that is, first off, to understand that I've been in so many people's shoes. And so I'm not a magical coach with a magical answer. I do believe that every single one of us has the answers within us, but it's about unlocking them. So I was a victim of the defeat of the diet industry for very long. And I think that goes to another, kind of topic that we have talked about societal norms and perfections and highlight reels and all those things. Okay. I'm a firm believer that staying in that cycle does deplete your confidence and it does tarnish your self-talk. So back to what you were saying, Michelle, it's not about a number on the scale. It's not about the pants and how they fit. It's about, in the grow world, it's for 5 pillars of wellness. And every single one of those pillars has to be in harmony. So the 5 pillars that I work with women on are physical health, mental, emotional, financial. I think it's important to understand our books, even in our own home, and spiritual. And I usually work with clients who are stuck in multiple different ways, but the biggest way, and this is really when worthiness starts to come through for me, or for my clients, or lack of it, is when we're playing the when-then game. Because the when-then game, and I'll share an example here in a second, is nothing more than a swap of worthiness right now for something else that's more important. And as moms, typically the biggest one that we play is when life gets less busy, then I will take care of myself. I'll tell you a quick story. I had a mentor, I've had several mentors who are no longer with me. One of them passed about a month and a half ago. He was in an international assignment in Hong Kong, wife, kids, money, fame, all the things. He was killed by a bus. He was hit by a bus on his bike, and then he passed away shortly in the hospital. He was also playing the when-then game. When I have enough money, then I'll retire. Y'all, your time is now, because we don't know how much time we have. Most of us know how much money we have in our bank accounts and our assets, our retirement, and all those things. We don't know how much time we have. So what I am passionate about is helping women realize that even just with the 1%, it doesn't need to be hard or complicated or 24 hours a day spent on you, but there needs to be something to put in your cup. Because if not, you'll just run yourself ragged. And so I hear so many stories about empty nesters who the kids leave, and now what do I do with my life? Who am I? You can keep yourself all throughout that process and still be a mom and still be a career woman. So that's my passion, to helping women not delay, because we don't know. We don't know when.
And I mean, I've seen that over and over and over as well, right? When the kids are off to college, I'll have plenty of time for myself. Well, guess what? In the meantime, you've run yourself so far into a ground. You got a big hole to dig out of. Why don't we just not get into that hole in the first place? Like,
absolutely.
Right? And same, like a little bit is better than nothing. And maybe we can start earlier instilling these beliefs in these kids. I did, when I was with this group, they're teenagers, and I did a poll. How many of you eat breakfast regularly? Less than half. Mm-hmm. Not because they can't afford food. No, they're too busy, right? Don't have time. Or, oh, I'm not hungry. I don't care if you're hungry or not. You're a human. You need to eat. Let's just know that, right? And those who did eat breakfast, it was deemed, less than desirable. How many of you move your body pretty consistently all day? Hardly any of them. How many of you get at least 8 hours of sleep? Almost none of them, right? Like, what is that going to turn into? Well, we know what that turns into. And so I really believe, and this is why I created the Be a Better Being Foundation, and I will be writing the Youth Revolution, my book's version for teenagers, because I really believe if the YBI, the Young, Beautiful, and Invincible, and the sooner we can get them to understand and truly learn what these things do to your human, they can hopefully reshape the beliefs and the behaviors that we have really allowed to take over that are not healthy and happy, contributing to healthy, happy humans. And that generation is what's going to cause the eventual shift to do things differently, with the whole being in mind, not just, chasing the dollar signs in the bank account or chasing the fame or being better than that person or getting, a better score than that person. But you know what? I'm a whole being, and there is not one piece that's neglected at the, to make sure all this other piece is taken care of. There's not this win over here at the complete expense of all of these things, because then are you really winning?
Right. Absolutely. Right? I have a client who, and I believe so many of us are fed these fallacies. She could either be a mom or be an entrepreneur or have a healthy life. Who said that? Who made that rule, y'all? I don't know. But here's the amazing thing. You can have all three, and you can have many more of those, and they all can live in harmony. And it doesn't mean that one day, hey, this one's down a little bit and the other one's kind of up a little bit, your time investment or your motivation or whatever, but they're all important. They all hold up. Going back to my point again, kids watch. Why aren't the kids having breakfast? Well, dad's running out the door, mom's running out the door, mom's eating while she's driving the kids to school. Who knows? They're learning all these behaviors as to what is important from us as a society and us parents. And what we've told them, based on how we act about ourselves, is that this task is more important than my health, whatever the task may be. I might be a little direct here, so excuse me, Michelle. Okay. I often have heard parents say, I would die for my kids. Are you willing to live for them and take care of yourself?
Yeah. I mean, that's what it comes down to, right? And it is the buy-in that these things matter. So many people are like, oh, that won't happen to me. Right? I'm different. That won't happen to me. I can do it all, except I can't because clearly look at me, I'm not. Right? And so it requires a change of mindset from everybody, from the leaders, the modelers, and then those that hopefully are going to be curious and courageous enough to follow to make this dramatic shift. And it's going to require a dramatic shift because we have more tools, resources, access to everything than at any other point in time. And yet we are sicker, most unhappy, highest rates of depression and suicide than at any point in time. What does that tell you? We are not doing it right.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think to a little bit of us as well, going back to social media, we probably have the most number of friends than we've ever had.
Yeah.
Yeah. We feel the most alone we have as a community.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll make your point, and maybe this is kind of a mind shift for some people here a second. We've had it all. And I think for most of us, that either looks like a stacked resume, that looks like possessions, that looks like the car we drive, that looks like the school that our kids go to school to or at. We can have it all. It just takes a shift in the way that we look at. We can have our physical health. We can have our emotional health. What says that these results over here about our possessions are worth more? Who made that rule? Than the fact that we're happy and we're healthy and we're connected and we're all these other things. Okay. So sometimes it just takes a reassessment of priorities. And I think most of us would say that happiness is more important than the car we drive. Now the question is, are we going to act that way?
Right. Yeah. It's a redefining of success. When someone tells me, oh, that person's super successful, and yet I see them on multiple, medications and they don't sleep and they're stressed, I'm like, sorry, I just don't define it that way.
Right.
So I guess it is, right? It's up to each individual to define what success means to them, and then you go chase it that way. Yeah. Well, this has been great. Exactly what I needed it to be. Thank you so much.
Good.
And
you're welcome.
We will put all the links to get connected with you, because I know you have some really amazing programming and offerings and just the ability to help people sort through all this stuff out. You and I are both very passionate about helping kids figure this out as well. So I know you're speaking with a group coming up in November, and these are things that Jen and I are both available for. So anybody listening, if you have a group of kids somewhere that you feel like, oh, I'd like them to hear some kind of a message like that, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to do that. Before we officially sign off, is there anything else that we need to cover that we haven't yet touched on?
Not yet, or not any more, but I'll just say thank you, Michelle, for your time. Appreciate it. Okay. I do create a lot of reels on social media. Maybe those would be helpful for some. And I always end them saying, you are worthy. And that's just my reminder for everybody that it does not matter where you are in your life, you are worthy of everything you want.
Thank you, Jen. That is a beautiful way to wrap it up. And thank you, everybody, for listening. And now, because you are worthy, you get to go and be a better being.
Thank you for listening to the Be a Better Being podcast. Michelle and Sasha hope that what you heard today inspires you to embrace this journey of life with an open mind, a kind heart, and a willingness to learn and evolve. If you enjoyed the content, please help spread their message by subscribing, sharing, and leaving a 5-star review. If you have a show topic idea or would like to be a guest, please visit betterbeings.net and fill out a contact form. Until next time, go and be a better being.